Nice. There we go. Hey guys, my name is Gabriel Gano, and I did my presentation on trucking. Let's go to the next slide. So, what is a commercial truck driver? It is a person who drives a truck from location to location and carrying cargo. Pretty self-explanatory, but you do have to explain it. These trucks can differentiate from each other, considering there's like a HGV, which is a heavy goods vehicle, or an LGV, which is a large goods vehicle, like a UPS or FedEx, a flatbed truck, which you see right here, and those carry like cargo, like you'd see on the road. It's like a normal semi, actually. And then there's also chemical tankers, which you see at the bottom there. Chemical tankers, like every other truck, require different licensing to use and operate the vehicle. So it's kind of cool to see that. And each of these obviously require a different license. That's what a commercial truck driver is. There's not much to it. So for the truck, if you want a job in trucking, here are some of the requirements you need to pass to get the job. So you need to have a high school diploma or a GED. You have to be 18 years old and be able to pass a random drug test at any time. You have to have a driver's license with little to no accidents. Obviously, you can have little fender benders and still get a trucking job, but most trucking companies are going to look for somebody who doesn't have a lot of accidents. So if you have a lot of accidents, you might as well not even send in an application, as they're probably not going to hire you. You'll probably be an insurance liability, just kind of the way it goes. You have to be able to lift 80 pounds daily. Considering you are moving cargo, you're not obviously moving cargo every day, but you are expected to move some when you're there, moving from plant to plant and moving from location to location. Also, you're living in this truck, so carrying stuff like your refrigerator in there and your water, your food can be pretty hard. And you have to either have an HGV license or an LGV license. These are two different things, and you need to have one of them to operate one of the vehicles. Now, just like a regular driver's license, you have to pass a CPL test. A CPL test is a commercial permit. So when you get your permit, you can actually drive on the road as a truck driver, just like a regular permit. But you eventually do have to obtain your CDL, and eventually, after a while, if you don't get your CDL, your CPL will stop working, and you won't be able to use it anymore. So the job information is pretty simple. Your salaries depend on what type of truck you're driving. Like I said, the trucks are very different. So like an LGV driver is a UPS or FedEx truck. They make an average of $66,000 a year, which can go up to $95,000 a year. Even some of the tops, like in the 20 percentile or 12 percentile, I believe, they can make up to 120. It really just depends on how long you've been in the company, how good is your work, and what you're doing. But those are what an LGV drivers usually make yearly. For an HGV driver, they make an average of $53,000 a year and can raise up to about $80,000 a year. This is pretty good for HGV driver, considering you don't need a lot to get the job, and your starting pay is honestly pretty solid. It's usually around a median pay of $40,000 a year. That's starting. So if you started a good company, work for about 2 years, 3 years, you can see your average. You can see you hit your average just in 3 years, which is great. It's a very good, well-paying job, and it's something we need. But like I said before, HGV drivers make different salaries depending on the type of truck they drive. So for an example, a flatbed truck usually requires a different type of license and usually requires some type of extra learning or extra permits you need to do that for. So a flatbed truck driver makes an average of $62,000 a year, with an going up to $80,000 a year, and obviously can go up more depending on the situation. But those are the median ranges I like to stick to. And just like a flatbed, you need other licenses. A chemical tanker is going to make $63,000 a year with a starting pay of 82, or with an ending pay of 82,000, and this can go up or down. A chemical tanker is a little bit more interesting though, because you have to do a lot more licensing and permits, because you're dealing with something that could really harm some people on the road. And so a chemical tanker's pay, the average pay is obviously $63,000 a year, but that's like starting, because it's not a job where if you're a chemical tanker, you're going to start at 40,000 like a regular HGV driver. You'll probably instantly be making the average just like that. And obviously this can go up a little bit more and more. But the ranges, like I said, I like to stick to is $63,000 to $82,000 a year. So let's go on to the next. So the trucking demographic is 80% workforce is male. I believe only 16.7% is female. It's a male-dominated job. And the average age for that job is 47 years old, which is pretty old comparing to a lot of other commercial jobs. And that's going to lead to some problems that I'm going to talk about later in the presentation as well. So 62.4% of the trucking population is white, followed by 16.9% being Hispanic and 14.1% being African American. Obviously, you can see my two dudes right here, both Hispanic men, and this is pretty common. I can think of an example easily. When I was in Colorado for a little bit in the summer, a lot of the truckers I saw in and around Colorado were Hispanic. 86% of those truckers in 2009 were found to be overweight or obese. This profession is riddled with health problems. It's pretty easy to see and understand why. You're constantly in your seat. You're constantly focused on the road driving. So you're not getting a lot of exercise every day. And when you are getting some rest time, you probably don't want to be doing anything. You probably just want to be relaxing, maybe doing some of your hobbies like playing games or playing chess, whatever the trucker may do to spend his time other than being on the road. Because, like I said before, these guys are on the road for about 12 hours to 14 hours of the day at least. So it can get pretty boring and it can be pretty bad and it can lead to a lot of health problems. Like health problems I can think of off the top of my head would be diabetes. They have a lot of problems with diabetes and heart problems. And eventually, like if you obviously get older, your bones and body start to become very weak for your age. So it is a problem with the trucking industry, and that's something that's trying to be addressed through the FMSC corporations and administrations. So for the average workday, these vary very differently. So a large GV driver is a scheduled 8-hour shift. You come in, I can give you the play-by-play from it, considering my stepdad, who obviously raised me, did it. So he's a UPS driver. So he usually arrive at the UPS warehouse around 8 in the morning. And in the morning, they usually get their trucks ready, get their packages on the trucks, and then the manager will go over the meeting, the routes they're going to take, and what's going to happen. But as soon as you're done with your 8 hours, or if you're done unloading your truck for the day, you are done. Now, this depends a lot on the season, though. Like I said before, an LGV truck driver is in a scheduled hour shift, but it depends on season. So what I mean by that is this. In the summer, a good chance is my stepdad would get a call on a Monday, for example, and would say, yeah, we don't need you at work today. You can take the day off. Okay. That's not going to ever happen in the winter. In the summer, what's going on in the summer? Nothing. Nothing's really happening at all. In the winter, when people are trying to get their Christmas presents, stuff for Christmas, just everything about the holidays, really, they're going to have to stay overtime, which leads to a lot of overtime potential. And I can think of moments where he went to work at 8 and came home at 10 that night. It can be really stressful and hard on these guys, but it is pretty good, well-paying job. And an HEV driver is completely different. So like I said before, when you're giving a task, so let's run through an example. I'm trucking, I drive a flatbed truck. I'm at a warehouse and I'm told to move this amount of cargo to Texas. I'm going to then go from where I am to Texas nonstop. There is no stopping and getting a hotel. There is no stopping and getting a house or renting someplace and waiting. You go the entire way there because you're living in your truck. So it just has to be completely in a timely manner. Obviously, these truckers get paid a little bit more incentively based on how quickly they get to their destinations while also being safe, but it is a much different job. Like I said before, they want to get to their location quick because the more it's just like I say, like, it's not like flipping tables, but the example would be, you have a table, you go with the next table, right? It's just like a trucker. They have their first load that they want to get done, and then they want to get the second one because they just want to constantly keep going and making money and not wasting their time. Because of this, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration had to step in and has had to require 30-minute breaks between certain miles and times driven on the road for these truckers, as they will just push themselves relentlessly until either one of them starts having problems or they get in a wreck and are a danger to other people. It's really tough. HGV drivers can see up to 60 to 70 hours a week, which is an extreme amount of time on the road, which is why it leads to a lot of health problems and whatnot and so forth. So there are lots of trucking problems right now, and that's kind of why I want to talk about this as my job of choice. So firstly, is the supply chain issue. Obviously, it's the biggest story in America right now. that our supply chain is very messed up from the pandemic. And a lot of that is because, as soon as we got out of the pandemic, the economy kickstart right back up. And these companies, trucking, shipping, sea, were all caught off guard by this. But even manufacturers are caught off guard by it and are not able to keep supply. And the big issue right now for the supply chain is there's not enough truckers being able to drive these big HGV trucks to Texas, to West Virginia, to Vermont, to Boston, wherever. There are just not enough people on these trucks to get enough stuff to these locations. And that's the first big issue with our supply chain, is why it's causing so much problem. It doesn't help that the trucking industry is also dealing with a $40,000 job lessening. They are missing $40,000 jobs, and that number is growing by the minute. Currently, I think it sits around 45,000 jobs in trucking are needed, and that expects to boom in just a couple weeks with the holidays coming around to probably 60,000. It's a bad problem that we're gonna have to really settle and figure out. And the third problem really is it's not growing. It's just simply not an industry that attracts a lot of people. And when it does attract people, like I mentioned earlier, they're usually older. It's not a young business or young career of choice. And that leads to a lot of issues because a lot of these guys who come in at, let's say our average age for a trucker is 47. If they come in at 42, they work for 8 years, they're 50, they want to stop working, boom, that's only 8 years. Instead of, let's say, a trucker comes on at 24 and like that's 14, 25 years. See what I'm saying? The difference? And it's just not a growing business in the industry because of that. There are incentive programs being set in place to hopefully get more people to consider trucking and consider trucking as a profession because it does pay well. It is a well-paying job and it pays the bills and you can have a great living by it. But incentive programs and programs to help people become truckers and all these things are becoming quickly and growing quickly too. So that's one thing that's a problem, but it is helping. And last, which I think is the craziest one, I can't believe it's actually a thing, is there's a lack of parking. From the pandemic, a lot of these rest stops on the interstate, through every interstate across America, a lot of them closed their doors and just stopped working, and now they're abandoned on the side of the road. And, no one really cares because, how many rest stops have you seen when you're on the interstate? You probably see a million. But the problem is these truckers don't have a place to park. And when they don't have a place to park, they don't have a place to sleep. And when you don't have a place to sleep and get rest, you get in wrecks. And that leads to more problems. And so a lot of these problems are coming from a lack of parking, not believe it. And truckers and their companies are dealing with the states and asking the states to help them, at least get them parking in some places, each place, to hopefully avoid this problem and help the supply chain because we really need it right now. These are my sources, guys. I use the PIA, Hiring Monster, Roel, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and the CDC government. I really appreciate you guys listening to my presentation, and thank you. Have a good one.